Hi there. I just saw a post on Instagram by Bethany Webster, who does mother wound work. I highly recommend her work. I have not worked with her personally, but I've followed her for many years, and she is a bright and brilliant human being. And her post, though, said that as young children, we tend to view our parents through rose-colored glasses because we need to. We need to be able to form bonds for survival with our parents. And then she also noted that moms or parents in general tend to perceive our daughters, is what she was talking about, but I think it applies to all of our children. We tend to see them through dark-colored glasses. Right? And to acknowledge this disparity means that there's something in here for us about our parenting, right? That we need to be careful about what belongs to us. So when something happens with our children, that we're also aware of what's happening to us, and that we don't respond to the situation at hand from our own interior wounds, but instead we are able to separate those things, what happened to us and what's actually going on in the situation, and to address the situation appropriately. So I've had these experiences a few times with my children who are now, my youngest is 18, but there have been moments, right, in time where something has happened and it triggered in me one of my wounds, and it would have been very easy to respond with an excessive amount of control, demand, punishment. And the key to dealing with it actually was for me to slow down and to notice what parts of it belonged to me, what parts of it were my inner experience and my fears that came from that, and then to actually deal with the situation that I actually had in front of me with them. And in that way, we could relate through trust, through working things out together, through naming things appropriately. So there's a couple of pieces in that, right? One is dealing with our own inner child wounds, our own wounds from childhood, being able to separate those from what was actually in front of me at the time. It required the ability to pause and take time. And there's one particular instance I can think of where it took me days to work through what was mine so that I could address what was going on with my child appropriately to what actually happened. And so just knowing it takes some of these abilities, it takes the ability to pause, it takes the ability to separate things, to take care of our own inner experience before we respond to what's in front of us. And I would say that the other piece of that is being able to work in our heads around the stories that we have. We tell cultural stories about who kids are. We tell stories about how toddlers are brats. We tell stories about how teenagers are entitled and selfish. So we have a lot of cultural stories that are not helpful when it comes to us actually relating with our children and the things that are actually happening right now for them. And so I highly recommend the mother wound work, whether it's just like following Bethany Webster and kind of getting a sense of what's going on in you and why these things are there, and then also translating those into our parenting practices, so that we can really raise our children as themselves, deal with the things that are happening to them. And so I don't mean by any stretch of the imagination that I mean that our kids should just be able to do whatever they want. I do not mean that at all. But I think we need to be very careful because it's so easy in that moment where our child does something that scares us, because when that happened to us, something bad happened, right? So there is a truth to us having an experience and having, knowing maybe more about the world and things than our children do. And yet we also need to kind of stay on track when something comes up with them. So hopefully that's helpful, and hopefully that gives you a pathway to working with your children in a way that's much more relational. That is, that you're actually dealing with what's here, because when we relate to our children through our fears and through our own wounds, we're projecting all that stuff onto them, and they know it, and they tend to call it out as unfair. They tell us that they hate us. They tell us that that we just don't understand. And all of those responses are keys and moments where we should pause and check in and see, where are we reacting from our old experiences, and where are we actually tending to what's happening in this moment.